Councilor McGee, Councilor Hernandez, and Councilor Sullivan with us, as well as Councilor Greening on the phone. And because we're still waiting for Chief Febo, if you don't mind, I'd like to move to item 3, which I think we can pretty much take care of, and that would include Representative Vega and Senator Vilas. Then you guys would be all set. Would that be okay? I'll entertain a motion to go out of order and take item 3.
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So item 3 is by Councilor McGee and Sullivan. Ordered that the legal department, the police chief, the fire chief, the board of health, and the state officials be invited into a public safety committee meeting to discuss and implement a plan or procedure to deal with negligent landlords in the city. So, Councilor Sullivan, you're one of the co-makers, so I'll defer to you at this point.
Well, that's fine. Right now, we've got the rep and the senator here. I'd like to hear what thoughts they have. The order kind of speaks for itself. We all know the problems we're having. So, okay.
Yeah, happy to. Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody.
Aaron.
Good to see you. So, I just sent an email to Ryan and Terry, so you can look at that one later. The chat seems to be disabled. Ryan, I don't know if you're the host, if you can enable the chat. I was going to put another website up for you. Yeah, we've had this discussion a couple of times. I guess, looking, if we have more of a charge after this discussion, we can maybe look a little more specific. Abandoned properties, blighted properties, there's a lot of legislation around that. I think there's a lot of ordinances around that. It comes down to enforcement. I think now if you're talking about the absentee landlord, the one that's moving properties through shell corporations and whatnot, obviously that's a much bigger issue, and there's not I think there's not a lot of tools at the state level that's provided for that at this point. It has been talked about with the Attorney General. I think 2 years ago, perhaps, or so, we were in the City Council chambers with someone from the Attorney General's office talking about some of this. So again, if there's different unique tools people think that they'd like to look into, we're always welcome to try to do a home rule petition. I know we've got one going right now for the Housing Authority, better enforcement. 8 years ago, when we did the Safe Streets initiative stuff with the law department back then, and kind of gave more oversight authority to other departments, that was hopefully going to give more tools. But again, it comes down to staffing and enforcement. So since my chat's disabled for me, I wanted to send you this website. But so the Attorney General's website, if you look up abandoned housing initiative, and that's the legislation. So there's a whole page about the Attorney General's abandoned housing initiative. Again, that pertains more to like the blighted and empty buildings. So again, if you're dealing with like a landlord that actually is still there and collecting rent, and it's a different thing. I know we worked with the police department a couple months back, or maybe a couple years back. We dealt with some of the issues on the building on
Appleton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Next item on the agenda.
Okay, so there you go. So, different game, obviously, if there's people living there.
Well, to that point, Aaron, separate from the abandoned buildings seem to be a little bit easier actually to deal with. But we've got buildings, and I know the chief isn't here right now, so I'm trying to do this from memory. But one of the buildings had a ridiculous number of police calls in one year, like 175 calls to one building. It
was 300 and something calls. Yeah. Which
is where we've discussed, and again, it's going to go nowhere legislatively, unfortunately. But we've talked about the fact that if a building owner like that was paying more than just the property tax of a residential, it was more commercial, there would be a little more revenue to take care of some of those calls, right? I mean, that's another issue that I know Councilor McGee and I talked about years ago. So, absolutely. I would defer to the law department as to what we can or can't do to a building owner that has a lot of police calls to it. I'm not sure. I think that we put in legislation. I think even when I was on the city council about enforcement about paying the water bill, the sewer bills. I mean, if those bills are if those taxes are up to date, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. Senator Vilas, would you like to chime in?
Well, I would just say, I mean, I guess I would, well, first and foremost, greetings, everybody. This is the first of hopefully many Zoom meetings with members of the Holyoke City Council and beyond, everybody else that's here, Chief. I'm not sure 100% everybody who's on, but I would just say, I'm really glad to be here. I mean, obviously tonight, I want to do a whole lot more listening than talking, but Councilor, I will say this, I know that, way back when on the campaign trail, you and I had discussed at our sit down kind of some of these negligent landlords, and I had the opportunity, the Holyoke Police Department was kind enough to take me on a ride along one day, and it's something we spent a good amount of time talking about, the role that some of these hot spots, if you will, happen to be where some of these landlords are and some of the stuff that's going on there. So I really want to tonight, I want to hear more about the problem, if that's something that's okay, and then kind of going forward, but certainly aware of it based on our conversations many months ago.
Okay. No, that's fair. And if I can interject myself, let me give you a few things that I mean, clearly there are landlords that have had problems with accepting tenants that are not living up to being a quality neighbor, and certainly the buildings on Elman and Appleton Street have been part of that. But we also have, and in terms, they're abandoned, and I'm going to use the building down on, there used to be the Conti Center down on Dwight and Main Street. I mean, that's just been boarded up. And I mean, to my understanding, he pays the fines, but he has no intention, or at least it appears he has no intention. I think he's been paying fines for like 9 or 10 years now. And he just leaves the building boarded up. It's right next to the train station. It has the potential, not far from City Hall, to be a pretty nice, and it used to be a very nice building. And yet we seem to be totally, we have no way of enforcing or making him end up taking his building and making it a viable building in the city. At least that's what my understanding is.
Yeah, I think that, so there's, I mean, I've been in that building, I think last summer, it was half the building needs to come down, half it's definitely salvageable. I think he not only, I think there's also, for a while, Whitman's property was managing the property. I think they had a, I forget what the word is. It wasn't put in receivership or anything like that, but there was a management company. Yeah. I think one of the times when the city fined them for something, they made them say, you have to have someone at least out there cutting the grass and taking care of the boarded up building. Yeah, I mean, there's also, I mean, that goes to a different conversation in some ways. I do know that I think that that particular building, I think every year or two, you might want to check in with Marcos, but I think he checks in with the planning department. He's like, oh yeah, I'm working on something. I applied for a mass development grant or something, right? There's some movement every couple of years. That's the other discussion of this is, we continue to try to put together incentives for gateway cities for development. We've had that conversation, as we know. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Councilor Sullivan and we certainly have filed several orders together as well, both in terms of landlords who are not maintaining their properties, landlords who are allowing illegal activity to take place on their properties, and then landlords that are just, like in this case, just continue to board up the property with what seems to be no intention. So it's not a single problem. It's obviously a multiple problem that we're trying to get as many parties involved and as many ideas so that we can make improvements in the neighborhoods, let the people living in those buildings feel like they're in a safe environment, that they're being cared for. And I know the building in terms of Elman and Appleton, not only police calls, but Chief Prespakowski fire calls as well, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, Councilor. I sent you data a few months back on the amount of calls that we've responded to that address, and it's troublesome on our end because it takes resources away from the rest of the city for nuisance calls, smoking in the hallway, things that can be policed by the landlord himself, and just aren't being done.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, fire alarms and things along that lines have been damaged in the buildings.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the tenants take security cameras down, they take smoke detectors down, they cover smoke detectors up. but sometimes the smoke, the amount of smoke that they create in the hallways trips a detector away from where they're standing, and we're there constantly. It's just not to the extent that the police are there, but certainly you saw the data I sent you. It's pretty extreme.
Yeah, and it's extreme from a police perspective and fire perspective. And Sean, if I'm not mistaken, from the Board of Health perspective, you hardly get any calls in those buildings on Elm, Appleton.
Yeah, that's correct. We rarely get any complaints, and usually the outside of the building is in pretty good shape, and so we are not ever in there because we're never invited in. We don't ever get any complaints about it, and so we have almost non-existent record of calls and complaints in the last several years
on those buildings. Yeah, I will tell you that when the building on Essex Street, when the roof or the facade came off of the roof on Essex Street, a lot of those tenants, or I had people that were in tenants in some of the other buildings that were saying, I said, you need to file a complaint. I can't have someone go in there without a complaint, to my knowledge. I mean, I can't have somebody, you go check something when someone's not telling you there's a problem. But I know there's a little bit of an intimidation factor about calling you guys. And I must say the intimidation factor in terms of the police and fire as well. So,
I think if I could just throw one other thing in,
Yep.
I'm also constantly talking to, the Landlords Association in Holyoke. So, you think we're upset and annoyed by blighted property and landlords not doing the right thing. I mean, if you're a building owner doing the right thing, you're Steve Bosco's, Greg Virgilio, One Holyoke CDC, you name them. We know a bunch of good landlords. They're the ones investing money in their city, and they're the ones who have property next to, the Sullivan Conti building. They're trying to do Depot Square, and there's not. You say to development here, we want to develop this building. When you look across the street, this building's about to fall apart. So
exactly.
I think at some point having the landlords in here for a conversation. I've talked to them a lot. I know many of you have met with them. They have monthly meetings. Their struggles. I mean, the ones that are good can be helpful.
Yeah, we've actually met with some from the Churchill Alliance, and yeah, they want us to do something aggressive in the landlords that are not making the neighborhoods look good. Councilor McGivern, and I see Councilor Sullivan and then Councilor Hernandez. I saw the hands. I finally saw hands.
The blue hands, you mean?
The blue hands, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, and I apologize for coming in late, just as you started, but I would have taken a minute, and I'm going to do it anyways, is to congratulate our new senator, Senator Vilas and John. Great, welcome aboard, and we're happy to have you. You can talk Aaron out of retiring, and we'll be in good shape.
I appreciate it. Great seeing you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody these days. I hate to get off. I'm not off on a tangent. I always usually save this for last because obviously this is an issue, not just Holyoke, but it's been going on for a long time. And what frustrates me more, and Aaron started to talk about it, but I want to take it a step further, is what I call the corporate or the capital, or I'm not too sure exactly how to phrase it, loopholes of what the bad landlords do, and that's the LLC. Once you form an LLC, for anybody that doesn't understand what that is, it protects an individual piece of property, what I say, especially in the court system. And that's where we need some change, I think. And I know it's easier said than done, but when an LLC, the city takes someone to court for a property problem, whether it's tax title, whether it's non-payment of taxes, whether it's what we're talking about with the landlords that are not keeping their property up, landlords that are allowing people to, commit crimes without very little say from them, right on their property. When we take them to court and we get to a point which takes forever in housing court, where we're ready to get something that's in our favor, overnight the LLC changes. And the prime example of this is a very tragic one, but a very, very sad one, was a building that caved in on Main Street and actually killed someone in the adjoining property. I think Chief Peskolowski can attest to this, which was right down on right at where you go into the flats, where the building caved in and actually killed someone who was working next door. And when the city came, to find out who owned the property, the owner of the property, the LLC, was contacted. It was the daughter of the person who actually owned the property, who was named the president of the LLC, and she said, "I never knew my father named me the president." I mean, that's how bad it is. But when we get into court, it's a legal nightmare, because it's almost like our attorneys in the law department tell us it's almost like starting over when the LLC changes, even though it's not really a change. It just looks like it's a change. And that's, if there's anything it can do for us, I mean, that is the most frustrating part that I've found over the years.
All set, Councilor?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, so back to just the plain abandoned ones. We do get all the resources we can here in Holyoke, but what else could the state be doing? I mean, we've got such a burden of, it's a combination of things. First, you've got the historic properties, right, that are just beyond the budget of a city like Holyoke to maintain at this point. Additional state, grant money or other programs that we might not be aware of, or that we're not applying for, or that somehow funding could be possibly made for. And then the sheer number of blighted buildings is way beyond the budget of a city like Holyoke. What other alternatives do we have?
Senator, Representative Chris?
That is the question. I think that we continue to have different programs. Mass development runs many of them, and a lot of money has come into the city. A lot of money's been, the hot construction we saw, before COVID-19 happening down at Canal Gallery, at Depot Square, obviously on Race Street, so there is things happening, but you're right, it doesn't happen fast enough, and it's the need is much more greater than the revenue source coming in to address it. I filed legislation for similar to the brownfield remediation, to have a code upgrade program, to help offset some of the costs of getting some of these buildings up to codes. We know the issues of getting these buildings up to code is astronomical. And then, as far as tear down, that more demo money, that's always harder to come by. Very little of it's coming from the feds anymore. We're open to more ideas. I think that, again, we were moving some gateway cities legislation before COVID-19 that looked at empty properties more in neighborhoods, not so much the big mill buildings or abandoned larger properties, but looking more at the single family homes and structures more in residential neighborhoods. But again, things have just sort of been derailed to a point where I think we're trying to figure out how we get through the budget and get back to some of the priorities pre-COVID-19.
I hate to do this. This is like law school 101, what you never do. But I want to try to answer a question by firing back a question. And one of the things my question is and this is something we can talk offline about as well, is what I'd kind of like is not an accounting, that's not the right word, but all of the steps the city has taken in the past, just to get us where we are today. I really want to get familiar with all of that. I know we touched on that, the real basics of it, but what's tried, what's failed, where everything has been the past however many years.
Could we have Crystal or Sean address that?
I mean, I can address a few things, and if Sean wants to chime in, I'm going to kind of give an overview of where we stand. The initial landlord that kind of brings this all to the forefront, or the owner, it's my knowledge that he's trying to sell his whole portfolio. We have now gotten to him on 2 separate properties. One, he's actually complying. He's under contract for the fire suppression system. I've checked in with Captain Kavanagh, the fire department. It's well underway. They're doing some last minute testing on it. And really, that was one of the major concerns at that property. We don't have other complaints there. And honestly, I don't think there's much of a public complaint at that property either. It's 50 West Street. Then we've got that other property where the parapet fell down. That is continuing to push through housing court. He had people out there. He got it, situated through insurance as well as his own funds to make sure that it was safe enough for people to return. We're doing an updated inspection there. The insurance company has reached out, so the insurance company is putting a lot of pressure on him as well. And so we're kind of working in conjunction with them to make sure that all the repairs, even that aren't related to the parapet that fell, are being remedied. There have been more complaints that came forward once that situation happened. And then certainly the Elm Street property where there are a lot of police calls, we had actually brought him into our office and had a sit down about his entire portfolio of properties and made sure that he had a plan. His plan at that time was actually to move into that building. He was waiting for an eviction to happen for one of the tenants so that there was a free space. I think he's actually ended up there regardless because he was living at the Walnut or Essex Street property when the parapet fell, and I think it forced him over to that Elm Street property. So that's his plan, is to actually live there and handle those complaints firsthand. We have put the bird in his ear that if he can't handle it, we will require the 24/7 police watch again. We did it couple of years ago. The problem is it only works while they're there. So is it an indefinite situation that we, force, or is there some sort of guideline where if, the situation remedies itself, can we then pull back on the police detail? And, it's something that we talked to him in great detail, but, we are on top of him. Like I said, we have at least 2 properties in court right now. The third, we haven't been in for an inspection. As Sean mentioned, we really don't get a lot of complaints about that property, which kind of ties our hands too. He, pays his taxes. He's paid every fine that we've ever issued. The fire department was heavy on their fining for the false calls for the smoke detectors. We forced him to put up no smoking signs anytime that was violated. He's paid every fine. So it limits our resources, what we can do if they're abiding by, all the usual, if he didn't pay taxes, we could go after him for taxes. If he wasn't paying the fines, we could lien the fines, etc. I will say we made great headway on another owner that we were fighting on a couple of properties. There was an owner that owned a Bridge Street property, an Appleton Street property, and a Commercial Street property. 2 of those, one of them is completely sold to a new owner, and he's been great in responding, so we think that's going to be a huge help. There's another one that is under a purchase and sale. We just finished the auction for that in the bankruptcy court. And then the third, similarly, we're getting in to do an inspection, I believe this week, and Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, the Commercial Street property. And if there's still outlying, situation there, then we're going to keep going and we're going to keep fining and make sure that they're paying all along the way. But I mean, we had the bankruptcy court behind us, the housing court behind us, pushing the bankruptcy court. I mean, we continue to use the resources we can as much as we can. But in the end, if they're following the rules enough, our resources are even more limited. We've even looked into CDBG funding for outside counsel assistance in some of our larger projects that, the city either lacks the resources or the time. The commercial building process is a little bit more involved than going through the housing court and residential properties. So we have some funding available. We're trying to get bids from some attorneys to see if they'll take on some of these other problem properties, the church on Appleton Street. We're looking at, there's a property on Suffolk Street that's been a major issue. But, these are major issues because they're major issues. Even outside counsel attorneys are looking at these and turning it down because, there's just, when you're looking at a dilapidated church, how do you renovate that other than making it a church? And, the churches they don't have a huge income stream right now. They're not looking to buy a 25,000 square foot building that's going to cost $8 million to repair. It's just, at some point you got to look at the reality of the situation and are these buildings going to be able to be rehabbed, or are we looking at leveling a lot of these large buildings? So we're trying to get at them before that becomes an issue. Every time we come up with a couple properties that seem to be under the same ownership, we try and get together and we pull that owner in and we say, look, here's your entire portfolio. What are you doing about these properties? We did an inspection, or at least a drive-by. It looks like there's a couple more issues. What are you doing? Are you up on your inspections? And we try and attack it that way. So we try and be proactive instead of reactive. But, you know, certainly the COVID situation has put a damper on that. I finally have some extra help in my office. That has been wonderful. She's really been a great assistance in pushing more things through housing court. So we're at least getting more hearings back up and running, but it's going to be slow moving from here on out. I think the courts are really slowed down, but
yeah.
You know, we use every resource we can. We use the AG's office. They have an attorney that helps us with the abandoned housing initiative. We give them properties to assist with us, and you know, we're trying as best we can, but the reality is there are some situations that it's just a total head scratcher of what on earth do we do, because they're following the rules just enough.
Well, the fact that you tell me that the potential that he's trying to get rid of his Holyoke portfolio, if he got rid of it to someone good, that could probably resolve a lot of the issues in terms of fire anyway.
I mean, I think a lot of the landlords that you spoke about tonight, they bond together and they look at these properties and they go after and they make bids to these people and say, look, I can get you out from under this mess. What's it going to take? You know, a few of them actually have gotten involved with this other owner, and, you know, we have a little bit more faith in those landlords when they come forward and they're purchasing these properties out from under them, or, you know, out of bankruptcy or out of housing court or whatever. So it speaks volumes to us when, you know, these guys are coming out and they're kind of bonding together. So we're hoping the same scenario happens. I did a Google search of some of those addresses. I don't see them actively for sale. That doesn't mean they're not. You know, it may be that they're not listed on realtor.com or something, but I don't see them actually for sale. So I've been told, but I haven't seen any evidence there that they're actually listed.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Crystal was saying, I think sometimes with these issues that they're you know, large and they're looming, sometimes the timeline is uncomfortable or difficult to deal with. But we've made a lot of headway with multiple landlords that have poor situations. But the properties that Crystal referenced, the Bridge Street property, the Commercial Street, and the Appleton property, I mean, that was almost a 2-year process from that being an everyday call, one of the buildings having a fire, you know, being a constant issue with illegal dumping, to getting that through housing court and district court and bankruptcy. And we really are moving towards a positive direction, but they just take a colossal amount of just manpower and time. Hearings that seem like they're going to be the end all be all, and then it's rescheduled, or there's another hearing, or there's new information comes to light. And so there's a lot of frustrations, but we do make headway. It just it takes so long with some of these. You know, 107 Clemente comes to mind as a building that you know, the city just took down, and it took us years. I mean, that building was a mess. It was owned by a landlord who bought it and did nothing with it, and we got it down. But it took a couple of years of working and going to court and getting a reverter deed, and then, you know, getting the funds together to take it down. But we were able to finally remove the building. That's not the most desirable option, but it does happen. So, you know, the Board of Health, we do inspections, and that is always the first step. But sometimes large inspections where you really ring up a massive amount of code violations can actually make a building less attractive to you know, new buyers, because you've really exposed all of the flaws and the liabilities of a building. And so it's not that they might not be prepared to deal with them. It's that now it's sort of public knowledge, and it becomes, you know, like a hot potato sort of. You know, people become wary of a property that has this long list of code enforcement activity by multiple agencies of the city. And that's not to say that's not an important process, but it can make finding a new owner or a responsible owner a slower ordeal than it might have been if we just said, okay, you need to get rid of this building. So sometimes the devil you know is not always, you know, better than the devil you don't. And so we've had buildings that have turned over, and then the people who bought them ended up being just as bad or worse. And so that's also the issue, is that you we mentioned the LLCs. Sometimes you don't always know who these new buyers are, out-of-state buyers. That building that we're still dealing with, on the corner of Newton Street, where we went there and we sort of unearthed all of the lasting issues there that maybe hadn't come to light. And then we got a new owner in there, and that new owner was just not equipped to deal with the scope of the issues. And so now we're starting that whole process, and we have to go through it again. So sometimes it's trial and error with those buildings just being a difficult asset to work with. It's not as attractive to certain people, and then it is attractive to some buyers or contractors that might not necessarily have what we would expect or consider best for the city in mind. So that those are some of the impediments that we are out there working, but it's not always successful the first time around.
We appreciate your effort.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, Cowie, you're going to be third on the list here, okay?
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, Mike, Councilor Sullivan, you still have comments, questions?
I think Libby's ahead of me.
Okay, well, you took your hand down and you put, okay. Councilor Hernandez, sorry.
Sure, thank you, Councilor Sullivan. And I want to welcome everyone. And I want to say congratulations to John Velez for your successful run. We all supported you and voted for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted just to add, and thank you, Crystal Barnes, and thank you, Sean, for all the information. I was reviewing the information that Chief Febo sent us on this common landlord that we have that owns all these properties, and the fact that some of them are perhaps in better condition than others, and he's addressing certain issues, but it still continues to be, and I know that there has been a betterment, but there still continues to be concern with them not having, a grasp and not enforcing. I don't think that they're maximizing what they can do as a landlord in these buildings, especially in the nighttime when, everything is closed, all the city departments are closed, and these landlords are nowhere, around because they live somewhere else. There's lots of things taking place in these buildings, completely out of control. So I don't know if there's anything in place that we can do or enforce besides the fines and everything else that they're complying with, but it's really sending a very negative message out there. I have a lot of constituents reaching out to me as it relates to, I have people that have told me that they've invested in their property and now they're looking to move out, and they're purchasing somewhere else and selling and moving quite rapidly. And that's a little, very sad to hear, because it's people that really are invested in our community, want to raise their children here in a diverse community. And we have to do something that's gonna stop that from happening, from people leaving Holyoke because landlords don't have a grasp of what's going on in their buildings, or they're afraid to enforce it because it's very intimidating what's going on. I walk, my father lives probably a few blocks away, and I walk from my home through the Sargeant and Walnut area, and what I see that's going on in all of this neighborhood is just completely, of course, people want to get up, pack up, and leave running out of here because it's just completely out of control. So I guess we have to find a method on how to do something that's going to bring back the confidence and the safety into our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Sullivan, and then Councilor Graney.
Okay, thanks. I bounce this one back to either John Vilas or Aaron Vega. So, we've heard, is there any pressure that you can bring upon the legislative, I'm sorry, not the on the judicial end of things, especially on the local judges? We've heard from Sean here about the long list about, really cracking down, having the judges themselves crack down. And especially when you get into these places like the place on Appleton Street with 300 police calls there. I can tell you right now, anybody that's been following any of this, the problems with drug trafficking in Holyoke and the opioid epidemic, some of these people have been 3, 4, 5 times in front of the same judge, and they're back out in the street 2 days later. They think it's a joke, and they're living in these places. It's like their own little fortress where they can get away with murder, and the judges are doing nothing about it. All right, Aaron knows we got a home rule petition right through to increase the fines for illegal dumping up to $5,000. I went with the Holyoke police. They had somebody dump 80 tires. They had them on video dumping 80 tires. I think the lady had an onion in her handkerchief and cried for the judge, and she was gone. Not even a $5 fine. And the landlord stuck cleaning up 80 tires. It's the judges and the judicial system that are as much a part of this problem, and it's leaving our police force frustrated, going back again and again and again with the same people over and over just to have them back out on the street 2 days later.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's Aaron. I don't know if this is necessarily something. Our approach, I'm not sure. I guess I'd give my perspective is that, this is something. So what was it in 2016? There was criminal justice reform that had so many good pieces to it, but I would suggest, and I only want to speak for myself here. I don't know if this is something that the rep agrees with, that there were other areas that I think we left on the table a good opportunity to potentially do. And that's, I think, Councilor, the things you're referencing, kind of these repeat offenders. And I think it's kind of, there's a mentality of giving, second chances in any number of areas. And I'm all about that. But where you lose me to an extent, and this is certainly something that I have heard from multiple people here in town, but also when I went out with HPD a few months ago, kind of going into the various neighborhoods, and it was the narcotics team that I went out with, and a lot of these areas we're talking about where they expressed many of these sentiments. So I have heard, I was on the House, on the Judiciary Committee. I am not on the Senate side, but I don't know, I very well could be, but there was some chatter about revisiting that portion of the criminal justice reform stuff we did. I think there was potentially a lost opportunity to dive into that. We hear it all the time, people going into court, same different offenses, like you just slap on the wrist, however you want to say it. So there is preliminary discussions right now that, let's call it like it is, everything's taken a back seat to COVID, but that's an area I hear you loud and clear on, but that's something I only want to speak for myself on that one. I don't know where Rep. Vega is on that.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, Councilor Sullivan? Councilor Sullivan, anything else?
Nope. No.
Okay, Councilor Graney?
Yeah, just quickly, informational question to Crystal. I don't know if any of these properties are receiving federal subsidies from the federal government or not, but if and when they are, they should be held accountable by the federal government for the appropriate use and the appropriate use of that money to keep these properties in good working order. So I'm not sure whether or not they are, but maybe through the federal government, if federal subsidies are involved, then there has to be an avenue to approach these landlords and residents about what's going on. Anyways, whatever you have to say about that, Crystal, I'd be interested to know.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of subsidies are done through HUD or through the local housing authority, a couple of various others. Like Sean and I have pointed out, a lot of these properties don't have complaints. If there's no way to, if people aren't complaining and there's no reason for the Board of Health to go in there, there's no record of these issues because the tenants are staying quiet, the owners are staying quiet. These subsidies aren't going to do random inspections. They wait until, similarly, they wait until the complaint comes through. Certainly we had some issues, that building when the parapet fell, a lot of those units up towards the top floor, that were found unsafe, et cetera. There was an issue where, their subsidies were going to pull the funding because, it wasn't a habitable space to be living. They had no reason to pay the funding if people were going to be there. but like I said, he stepped up to the plate and he got the repairs done and got the people back in, and so it wasn't an issue. Certainly.
Well, there are complaints being made. I mean, the police blotter has plenty of complaints from people in the neighborhood. From Councilor Hernandez has mentioned that there are numerous problems in these buildings. So those are complaints that should be taken care of. And if there are federal subsidies involved and there's criminal activity going on, then we should be able to get assistance.
So those are police calls. Those are not Board of Health calls. It's a different plan of attack when that situation arises. The landlords are to be utilizing their resources to evict tenants if they're going to be a continued burden, as far as if they are involved in drug activity. There's some statutes that they can utilize to assist with evictions. And to my knowledge, I've spoken with the legal counsel for the owner. He does file them. They're continuously in court, evicting people, getting them out. But when you have activity of people who don't live at that property because they're visiting, that doesn't help the problem either. These aren't tenants in the property. It's just police activity that is a natural occurrence because of the people that are living there. It's a little bit more difficult to use those statutes when it's not an actual occupant.
Anything else?
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that there's also a statewide moratorium on evictions at the moment. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but it's going to be very difficult to get an eviction right now unless there is some sort of overwhelming, reasoning behind it. And even police calls, at least on the Board of Health side, are not equated to be considered a public health issue. So we have included, police calls before, police records. And when they go in front of a judge, I don't see them given a lot, at least in housing court, I don't see them given a lot of weight. They really are looking at sanitary code violations, and the other issues are considered to be ancillary. And they're not necessarily interested whether or not criminal activity does not count as a sanitary code violation. And that's what I have seen when we have tried to bring that up. Several of the counselors will be familiar with a house that we had issues with on Longwood Avenue. And I mean, there were issues there all the time with, the police being called and drug activity. And that made very little difference when it came to the pace that code violations were remedied there, or expediting the process took forever, despite the clear danger it presented to the neighborhood. So just another factor.
Just quickly, if there's needles involved and needles that are distributed or are strewn around the area, that certainly has something to do with the Board of Health, I would imagine.
Sean?
Yes, any waste, but especially a biohazard, does have to deal with the Board of Health. We are constantly in those alleyways, and we're in touch with Tapestry. I don't get complaints about trash at this property or behind this property. We are in the neighborhoods, in the tree streets on a regular basis. Especially there's that large property that's now under development by Wayfinders, but for a long time, that was an area of concern as well. And so we're there regularly, but I don't know that assessing fines for needles or trash on the outside of the building is going to solve the crime issue of the tenants inside. They're not held accountable in any way for trash. It's always going to be the landlord. And so even if, we issue fines for cleaning that up, I don't know that will have a large impact on the fate of the building in the long run.
Okay. Councilor Graney, you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else? Okay, if I can, couple final comments for me, and then I'll entertain a motion. And this goes to the senator and the representative. I mean, as you can see, one of the biggest problems here is that we go back to court over and over again. We file complaints, and it kind of just keeps going around a cycle. And obviously, we got to protect people's property rights on the one hand, but we also got to protect people's quality of life in the neighborhoods if the person owning the property is not doing what they can to keep the neighborhood going. I don't know how we move the process, but if there's a way of making it so that we don't end up taking someone to court 3, 4, 5 times. I've been back on the council for 16 months, and I've been talking about Elm and Appleton Street for about 15 of those. So, and I know it's not the first time. So, I mean, those are the kind of things, and whether it's be someone not maintaining their property, someone having criminal activity, or boarded up buildings that we need to remove. And I know and Sean, I never get the committee that you have with regard to building. I never get the name right. That building committee, I know that's not the right name.
We call it the problem property group.
Problem property group.
Yes.
We've got a recommendation from them. I think it was about 11 or 12 buildings, and we certainly will. And I know you're saying there's not a lot of state money for demolition, but in reality, if we don't demolish some of these things, we also hold back on the ability to get development in those neighborhoods, because you got boarded up building, or in some cases buildings that have actually fallen, and who's going to invest there until that gets cleared. So, I mean, that also could be part of an economic development strategy from the state to help us. And I know we appreciate what's happening in South Holyoke in terms of the state's funding and help, but that's just an example of both timing, get the process moving, and help us where we can. If we can't do it one way, we got to find another way to do it. I appreciate everybody's time. Councilor McGivern or Councilor Gonzalez, Councilor Hernandez, would you like to make a motion on this?
So, Chairman, I think with our rules, it's only you and I that can vote now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Libby, thank you for filling in, because I was going to be late and our third member's not present. I leave it up to the maker of the order. We have two options. That the order, it's been a great discussion. We could call the order complied with on that basis. But we also could look to see if we could get some written comments back about some new strategic plans that we could implement. I mean, it just, and John, I appreciate your comments about looking for some history, but history on this subject goes on and on and on. And it just seems like it keeps repeating itself. And I think Crystal said it best, it's we can do this and then this happens, and it just doesn't seem to work. Does it make sense to keep it on the table, see if we can get some written stuff back, and then let the city council know?
Councilor Sullivan, you want to comment on that? Sure.
Yeah, that might be a good idea, especially since President McGee couldn't make it here tonight too. He might want to add some stuff to it, or have a few more questions or comments.
I'll make the motion to table and thank everyone for a great discussion.
Then I'll second that, and also thank all of you, and appreciate that. And for item 3, to put it on the table, keep it on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Okay, 2-0. If I can, Joe, let's just go to item 4, which we just discussed. Even though we didn't take it up, we really were discussing it. And item 4 is Councilor Murphy ordered that the mayor, the law department, the police department provide an update to the Public Safety Committee regarding the nuisance complaint for the buildings on Appleton and Elm Street and 556 South Bridge Street. And can we expect a greater police presence with the landlords' cooperation in the near future? And I'm going to say that I would indicate that the order has been complied within our discussion.
So moved.
So all in favor? And unless anybody wants any further comment on that, we've talked enough, I think, about those buildings. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right, Councilor, are you all set with us for now?
I think we are.
Okay. And I'll resend the information on the blighted properties legislation.
Okay, that would be great.
Some stuff. Okay.
Yeah, anything you can do, and anything you can do to kind of improve the speed of the process, so that we don't end up having the same conversation again in a year. But thank you both.
I'm sure we will.
We appreciate you both giving us your time. Thank you.
Good to see you, Councilor Senator. I'll see you soon.
Okay, well, we'll see you. We'll talk soon.
Okay, I'm going to go now to item 1. Councilor Hernandez ordered that the residents from Pine Street near Appleton Street have expressed concern of the increase in drug trafficking and transients in their neighborhood, parking and idling in front of their properties.
Motion to take off the table for discussion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And they have also asked that the neighborhood watch signs be posted in an attempt to display that the community meets and is vigilant. And Ryan, can I just ask you if you could try to get in touch with Chief Febo to see if he might be able to join us?
Yeah, so I'm trying to. I don't know if there's something that's up with his email address. We received an email from him. I think it was on Friday, and he talk about possibly have an executive session to discuss this.
Oh, that was on the other issues. That was on issues 5 through 9.
Right, but I'm saying that he was aware of the meeting, and so I sent back to that same email address, his, the
Okay.
Zoom information, and then I just looked, and it seems like it's being sent back to me. So I don't understand. I don't know what is up with either his email or maybe it's my email, but I did send the details to the email address that I would normally always send to, and it just doesn't seem to be going through. I did send an email to his secretary, Heather, with the Zoom information details. I'm looking to see if anybody has his cell phone number or something that can maybe get in touch with him if he's not getting the emails, but it was sent to him.
Hang on 1 minute, Ryan. I might have that.
While Terry's looking, there is an issue with the email. His old email is supposed to forward to the new email that he inherited when he became chief. And at this point, it was working, but at this point, there seems to be a problem. It was a problem with the last finance committee meeting, Ryan. Had a talk with them.
Ryan, can you try this number?
Yeah.
221.
Don't give him out the cell over the air now.
All right, Ryan. All right, I don't know what I'm going to do then.
Yeah, Terry, I'll give you a call, okay?
All right, you give me a call.
Hey, Terry. Guys,
Yes.
I'm gonna be signing out. I was really just here for number 3, and I've got a bunch of things to attend to. So, good night, all.
Hey, Mike.
Can I just quickly ask a question before I sign off? Just before I wanted to.
Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, is it possible? Someone mentioned like the bad building association or whatever. I know tonight wasn't the appropriate forum, but I would love to have kind of a follow-up offline conversation to do more of a deep dive on this, so I can think about ways that I can be of assistance going forward. So, and I'm sure I messed it up, but the bad building association, I know I got that wrong, but
I think we have a new name.
I would love to find out. I would love to find out. I don't know if it's something that Crystal or Sean can help me out with, but I'd love to find out more. So that's my first ask. And the second ask is, I want to know if there's someone who would at any point in time be willing to kind of take me on a walk or whatever through these, go check out these buildings, go check out these neighborhoods. I'm kind of a roll my sleeves up type of legislator. I want to get really boots on the ground, if you may. So I want to throw that one out there and just let folks know that I definitely want to know more. I want to be of assistance, but I'm old school. I want to find out more before I act like I know more than people who have been dealing with this for years now.
Senator, I can answer. Our problem property group meets next Thursday, and we're doing it obviously remotely. I can reach out to the maker of that meeting and see if it would be worthwhile for you to at least listen in. Depending on what the agenda looks like, sometimes it's a little less involved, sometimes it's more involved, but we certainly welcome yes. We also have a smaller group, the code enforcement group. It's a subcommittee of that larger group, and we used to meet every other week with our Board of Health and Building Department really tied up right now, as well as the Law Department. Unfortunately, we just haven't met. We haven't really had a reason to either, with no hearings happening. Usually it's our chance to find out what complaints are coming through, what needs to happen, and we set up inspections. We make sure everybody's prepared for court that week, et cetera. But I can involve you a little bit, and we can touch base via email. Sean and I, as well as Damien, our building commissioner, we've always been happy to kind of guide people around. If you want to do a tour of some of the latest and greatest, we can certainly do that. I know that Sean is very bogged down right now, especially with businesses trying to open. He has to do a lot of increased inspections right now, but if you want to touch base with me via email, we can set something up, for the future, or I will have your email so that I can let you know about the group meeting next week.
Yeah, Crystal, could I just grab your email from you?
Sure, it's my last name, barnesc@holyoke.org.
Barnesc@holyoke. Okay, that's probably a good place to start, and we'll go from there. And okay, and it's the problem property group. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Senator, thank you very much.
I thank you so much for having me, and I'm really, really, really happy that I can, you know, I represent Holyoke now, and I'm really, really excited about it. I've come to really love it over the course of the campaign and the week that I've had in office. So view me as an ally, and anytime you want to connect, please reach out to me. And I'm looking forward to
We're excited to have you.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Take care of yourself.
Thanks,
Stay safe.
Senator.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to now go to item 1 from Councilor Hernandez. Order that the residents from Pine Street, we already just did that. So,
All right, we're trying to find out where is it that these
yeah, we're
signs
trying to
are
get the
located.
chief. We're trying to see if we can get the chief involved. But I also want, we got Mike McManus here, who's also joining us, and he could talk about posting the signs on the neighborhood.
Oh, okay,
blocks.
perfect. Thank
At
you.
least to get that part if we can. So, Mike, are you aware of the signs? Mike McManus?
Yeah, so I know there was an order for signs a while ago. We don't have the neighborhood watch signs. It's not something that we make. I had looked into buying a bunch of signs for the city, and at the time it was the cost was a couple $1,000s. I think Dave Barley had filed an order for neighborhood watch signs throughout the city, and it just didn't have the money to buy the signs. We could, you know, go out and get a handful of signs for this specific area, if that would be acceptable. It's just to do something citywide, we don't have the money for it.
Okay, so
Councilor
when you,
Hernandez?
oh, I'm sorry, I got
Councilor
permission to
Hernandez.
talk.
Yes, Councilor Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Thank you. So, Mr. McManus, so when you say that you can order some signs for certain areas, how many signs do you think that we will be able to order?
I mean, we could probably do 5 to 10.
Oh, okay.
Would that be enough?
I know that.
Well, go
I
ahead.
know that, you know, well, I'm sure that there's a lot of areas that need these signs, like
Sure
Councilor
is.
Murphy was, you know, we have, I know that here in the corner of Sargeant and Walnut, it would be great that we can have one of those signs, but initially, like I said, the neighbors from Pine Street, they specifically was under the impression that there were signs available, but now that we find out that there isn't, yeah, I mean, if you can order like 10 signs, that would be great. I'm not sure about the processes that have to take place in order to approve it or not.
Yeah, I don't know if neighborhood watch signs are by ordinance.
Oh, okay.
If they were, then that would really slow the process down. But otherwise, we would buy the signs once they come in. Beforehand, we could do a dig safe, mark it out, make sure that where we're going to post them, that we can drive a sign post into the ground if we're not going to put it on a telephone pole. And
Crystal, do you know if it's an ordinance? Crystal, do you know if it's an ordinance?
Sorry, I had to step out. What was the question?
The question was whether or not putting up signs, neighborhood watch signs, is that governed by ordinance, or is that just we're putting up signs to make people aware that they're working together?
I'd have to look. I don't believe we have a section for neighborhood watch signs, but I know every other sign in the city is governed by ordinance. I would suggest that we would do the same with these, just so we know where they are.
Okay.
So if for any reason one is damaged or one needs to come down or it's inhibiting a view or something of that nature, it seems like every other sign does have a specific location, so it would make sense.
Okay. Would it make sense for us to table this meet for one meeting and make sure if it is by ordinance that we get it done right, and then come back and do that?
To piggyback on what Crystal said, I have seen neighborhood watch signs in the city.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen them in the ordinance. So it might have been just something historically where somebody wanted a neighborhood watch sign, so they threw it up themselves, you know?
Councilor Hernandez, if we can do it without an ordinance, that would be the goal, right? And exactly, like exactly where I know this was a specific group on Pine Street, right?
Yes. Pine and was it Pine and Appleton, I believe?
Yeah, that's the Pioneer Appleton, you said.
Pioneer Appleton, yes. I have the addresses, and it's
On both
and
sides?
then, I mean, I know that you had some areas that you would like, and Councilor LeBron actually also had some other areas in these lower wards that those signs would be much appreciated to try to, right? Maybe display some type of I don't know, send a message to the criminals or
Yep.
the criminal activity that's taking place. Maybe they'll think about it more
One of the other things.
park or before they do anything in that area.
So that's one of my concerns is we really don't have funding to deploy to put neighborhood watch signs throughout the city. And we could start in one neighborhood and then expand to another and another. And then the fourth neighborhood is going to say, well, what about us? We should get signs too. And we have limited funds.
Are they relatively small signs, Mike?
They are small signs, but the posts, when you get the sign and the post and everything that goes into it,
yeah,
it's not like it's a $5 sign,
right?
And when you want 100 signs, 200 signs within the city, the cost adds up.
Yeah, and
we just don't have really fat budgets.
No, I understand it.
Councilor Murphy?
Yep, Councilor Graney.
Yeah, just quickly, I haven't had a chance. I've been through part of the fiscal year budget for next year. Is there anything in the budget for next year, which is right around the corner, that could cover that, Mr. McManus?
I'm sure we could use part of it, but we always wind up spending our budgets because they're not big to begin with. And I did not put in, $2,500 for neighborhood watch signs. There wasn't a capital outlay, if you will, for that. What we did was we took the budget, we looked at what we spent on average for the last 5 years, and that was the number that went into the budget.
Is there any way you could put a supplemental budget in there?
I don't believe there is a way at this time, but I don't know. That's beyond my
beyond your purview.
Yeah, and I think the budgets are tight as it is, right? If you look at
well, the budgets are tight, but we also have priorities too. Thank you.
I'll set it up. Councilor Hernandez.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Greeny. I was just gonna say that maybe we can explore like other ways of trying to find funds. Maybe maybe like through CDBG or something, sometimes there's monies for different things that maybe allow us to order these signs for crime.
That's a good
prevention,
idea.
Crime reduction. I mean,
so I can check with Alicia. Usually what I hear back from Alicia is that CDBG shouldn't be used for
just real
regular
quick, so
government.
Chief did get back to me and he can't make it to the meeting. The email that he gave me is the exact one that I sent to. So this is
Hey guys, you got to mute.
that I'm gonna have to talk to
Ryan.
We can hear you.
There.
So I can
What were you
check with I'll check with Alicia to see if we can use CDBG for these signs.
But usually you said that what you get from them is that we can't use those monies for.
Well, they consider some things the cost of regular government. So whereas like a sidewalk is a brand new sidewalk, it's new construction. It's not sidewalk maintenance, but roads would be road maintenance, unless you're redoing everything in the road, all the utilities at the same time. But
Unless it gets worded differently,
Alicia's the expert, and she knows the rules a lot better than I do.
But we could be in just supporting Councilor Hernandez's idea there that we could be in a situation. Obviously, if we have good neighborhood watches in the neighborhoods, the potential of creating safer neighborhoods obviously is enhanced. And certainly if we could spend a little bit of money doing that. The other aspect of this, and by the way, Ryan just called me. There was a communication problem with the chief, and he has not been able to get on to Zoom, so he's probably not going to join us. So we're probably going to end up tabling a few of these items to make sure we get him back. But that's I think Councilor Hernandez's idea. Whether Mike, it's working through your department or working through the police department, or some neighborhood group that we might look at doing that. The other aspect of that, and this is when I first saw your order, Councilor Hernandez, I thought, exactly how do we create a neighborhood watch, and what kind of training do people get, and what kind of cooperation do we get? So those are all things that if we should table this, I'd like to see if we can get a further discussion, not only to figure out how we get signs, but also to figure out how to make that neighborhood watch more coordinated with the whole neighborhood, but also with the police, and making sure that we're all on the same page. So, I mean, I thought when I saw that, I thought this is a good opportunity for discussion.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. But the chief is not going to be making, but I would like to at least keep, if it's okay with you, Councilor Hernandez, to leave this on the table. I got Councilor McGee, and he wants to say something before we do, so I won't say table it yet. Councilor McGee?
Thank you. Just real quick, I think the chief may, because the police department works closest with neighborhood watch groups. They may have some money they can free up, but Libby also, we could ask the mayor, and maybe it's kind of late in the budget cycle, but ask the mayor when we get the free cash for next year, which I hope is going to be better than this year. And a little bit of free cash could be freed up too. I think those are two areas. The chief might be able to do it before the year's over, and the mayor may do it next year.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to table?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll take this back, Libby. Next meeting, I'll have the chief, we can get the chief in, so we're going to deal with it again prior to. Item 2 on the agenda is also from Councilor Hernandez. Ordered that the police department locate their community policing truck on the corner of Sargeant and Walnut, as there is an incredible influx of heroin trafficking originating at 308 Walnut Street, and members installed across the street at 300 Walnut Street, Coughlin Apartments. Shots fired and now fireworks on a daily basis. And Chief Perspikowski, I'm glad you're still with us, because this is an issue I think you've also had some issues with. So make a motion, we take it off the table, Joe?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I know Councilor Hernandez has had concerns. I have had concerns from my constituents on the other side of Sargent Street. I've had concerns down here. Chief, can you just talk about, I know this fireworks thing is like the 4th of July happens 8 weeks early, but it's like unbelievable in terms of where it is going throughout the city. And it's like every single night.
Yeah, it's been a real problem. We've been getting phone calls. The police have been getting phone calls. I put a PSA out the other day on the safety of fireworks. We need some enforcement of some kind. I can only go so far on my end. I can ticket for improper permitting for displays, but as far as illegal fireworks being shot off, it's a police matter, and we need to get the police out there to. And they have been responding. It's just hard to catch these people. They come and go, and they set them off, and they take off, and police show up, and they're not there. And it's just a common thing around this time. It seems to be exasperated this year, because I think everybody's at home and they're dying to get outside, and it's definitely a problem though, and I'm aware of it. I put it out to the press. I put press releases out, and whatever we can do to work in conjunction with the police to try to quell it, I'm in favor of.
Have you just had small fires, like garbage fires, or have they been in buildings?
Oh, they've been in buildings. We lost 6 Owens Place last year to a fireworks fire, burned the house down to the ground. We had a small fire down in South Holyoke the other day where a bottle rocket caught some debris on a roof of a garage on fire. So these things are dangerous, and especially in the downtown area where everything is so close together, it really exasperates the problem.
Okay. Councilor Hernandez, it's your order. I didn't want to, I knew I heard the fire issue, and I wanted to make sure we got that since we have the chief here.
Sure.
You want to just, I know your order is self-explanatory, but it's your floor right now.
No, yeah, I mean, we have to really do something about it because it's and I know that it's a lot of things together, but mainly the police presence there and just the disregard, for I have so much of the constituents reaching out to me, and the animals are traumatized with all these fireworks. Yep. Not only that, even humans they have PTSD.
Yeah.
And all these, sounds, excessive sounds are triggering, for them. So it's not healthy. And just with everything that's going on, it just adds the fireworks, the mopeds, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, this is going on. And we get it like in all corners, Sargeant and Walnut. We get it X's and X's and Pine and it's just in all the corners, and it's very frustrating to have to live throughout it. And also like I said, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, can't even rest the right way.
Right.
So that's besides the fire hazard, like the chief was saying. But there has to be something, and I know that there has been arrest. This ward has been very vigilant, and I know that there's pictures taken, videos and everything, and it ended in some arrest, which is good because it sends a message out there. But also it could be dangerous for the residents, because they can go after us. Look at what happened in my property. They tagged my property with obscenities with spray paint. And it very well can be that they're upset that we're bringing all of these issues up or whatever it is. But nevertheless, we have to continue to fight for what's right. And I just need, like what the chief says. He says that he can't do it alone. They need police presence. And I think that if we all work together, we can make things happen and have a better community.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you, Councilor Hernandez. That's a good order. And I just had a constituent I'm going to read, and I won't give her name, and I won't give her address, but basically she asked me, I'm not sure if this is on your radar, the fireworks on Pine and Sargeant Street, which is another block up, at the block at night. This has been going on every night, and we are essential workers and who have to be up at 2 a.m. daily. She's contacted the police every night. They come and the fireworks stop, but then the police leave and they start all over again. So clearly, one of the things we got to figure out a way is when the police get there, I mean, we need to take and I'm assuming, Chief, you can answer this maybe, that the police department, if obviously it's illegal to have fireworks, that the police coming, if they see the fireworks, should be able to take them from the person. Am I correct in that?
You're absolutely correct. The police are the only ones that can confiscate the fireworks.
Okay.
So that's the kicker there. We respond to the calls if there's a fire of any nature, but still we can't confiscate the fireworks, even though if we know there's fireworks. We need a police officer there to do that for us.
Okay. And so we need to work. But this is the last comment this person made. Is I lived in Hoyle my whole life and would like to continue. And this goes along with what Councilor Hernandez said before. But this has been I've been having second thoughts. Is it safe for my family? And these are the kind of things we got to take very seriously and make sure that we don't leave those kind of residents thinking, should I stay? And then the other aspect of that is the community policing part. And I'm sure I'm pretty confident that the narcotics division is working in that area, but it would be nice if there was a chance for the neighbors to get to know the police officers a little better as well. So again, the chief can't make it, and we had communication problems, and Ryan did try to get him and found out they can't get through.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think we probably would table this unless you want to send it to the council with a recommendation that we can do that too, if that's okay with you. We could ask the chief to have.
Councilor McGee has his hand up.
Oh, well.
I had the blue hand up too, Libby, but he's slipping.
I know.
You had a blue hand? Hey, I can't see even the red. I can see red, white, and blue only. Go ahead.
I don't have anything to add. Enforcement is key here. Enforcement.
Yep.
And encourage people, which I do, I think we all do, is don't be afraid to call the police department a second, a third, a fourth time, especially if you have an address, because the police department, it's not a nuisance, and they will document it, and it builds up something to where they can see it's the same address, and they can maybe get there before it happens on another night, if it's possible that they got the manpower to do it. But it documents the history, and that helps the police department do their job. But enforcement is the key. I maybe not table it. Maybe we could ask the full city council to refer it to the chief of police, that we've had this discussion.
Yep.
We'd like to see the enforcement picked up because it's June. We have one meeting next week, and this isn't going away before the 4th of July, and may not go away all summer the way things are going. So I think we have to get it to the chief real quick.
Okay, so the recommendation would be that we adopt it, refer to the chief with specific reference to enforcing fireworks regulations, and also to create it, to plan for a community policing truck on Walnut and Sargeant.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, I'm gonna do, and if it's okay with everybody, we're gonna combine these, and then I think Chief and Jeff and Crystal, you could probably all be done if we can get this through. So council number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm going to read them, but then I'm going to make a suggestion that we would table them for further reference. But Councilor McGee, Councilor Leahy, Councilor Tallman ordered that we provide an updated list of safety options and procedures put in place to deal with security safety at City Hall for subcommittee meetings, full council meetings. Second order was Councilor Leahy on proper procedures set forth in City Hall regarding emergency threat or violence, and with developing a clear plan. Councilor Leahy, that whether or not there could be emergency contact inside City Hall, City Council chambers. Councilor Leahy, whether or not we could have surveillance cameras in City Hall Annex. And also Councilor Leahy, number 9, the idea of what kind of system we have in the mayor's office and the city clerk's office. So if it's okay with Councilor McGivern, we'll take all of those at the same time.
So moved. Make a motion to table, and for the purpose of having an executive session in the future.
Okay.
If I,
yeah, Councilor Mike, Councilor Director McManus, Superintendent McManus.
So for item 7 and item 9, there are emergency buttons at the mayor's office and
okay,
the city clerk's office. And
Mike, I'm going to have you hold off for a second on there, because one of the things, and when I filed these had all been done before, but nobody had been taking them up. And as I put them on the agenda, I have been encouraged to let us plan for an executive session at our next public safety meeting, with the idea that whatever we do, we'd like to not make it available to people that are going to want to cause problems, I guess. So if we were to table that, that's what the goal would be, that we would take it back up. Some of those I could just get from you in terms of contact information, just a communication in writing from you, Mike, just letting me know, your email, letting me know the answers on those questions that you know. And it would just be, then I can bring it up in executive session, if that's all right.
Works for me.
Okay. So, and Jeff, again, because of the fact that, you do emergency management, we'd like to be in a situation where you can kind of give us some feedback in terms of how we should do it. And
oh, absolutely.
So we're putting you to work right away, even more. Huh?
Good.
Right.
Oh yeah, no problem. I think one of the things I talked with the fire chief earlier today is that their focus is the emergency response, and my focus is primarily the recovery, or the what do you do after the emergency, right? How do you get back to work and business? So I think it'll be a good discussion. Okay. That'll cover all the essential points.
And I do want to thank Attorney Barnes and Chief Febo. As they got the agenda, they both indicated to me this really should be something you want to take up in executive session, so that whatever we end up doing is something that's understood, but understood by the people that are going to be impacted. So motion was to table.
It was, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment now. You recognize Jeff on that last talk there. We have two Jeffs, one who has a video on and one who doesn't. So the person who just spoke was Jeff Trask, our emergency management director.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Motion to table for another meeting for executive session.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All of those will be tabled. So next time we do it, we'll do it in executive session. I'll call a meeting, but I'll bring it up and then we'll go into executive session to deal with them. And I do appreciate, Crystal, I appreciate your advice on that. And Chief Febo, you're not here, but I do appreciate your input. And all the counselors that filed the orders all said they would agree with that. So item 10 on the agenda.
Take off the table for discussion.
Take it off. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Bartley ordered that the DPW and the city engineer advise city council about the installation of more efficient catch basins, especially on steep hills such as West Glen.
Yeah, so as far as catch basins go, there's all different types of catch basin inlets, all different designs, and some of them work on hills, some of them work on flat areas. This one on West Glen, at the bottom of the hill, it's one of the standard catch basin inlets that you see throughout the city. It has very small openings. It's not good for catching a whole lot of flow that's coming off the hill. It's better on more gently sloped streets. And another problem it has is it has small square openings that can plug up with debris and leaves and grass clippings and whatnot. And also on the odd side of the street, the catch basin inlet is about 3 inches off of the curb, which doesn't help collect water either. So it seems like this one situation, the catch basins have been there for, I don't know how many years, could be 20 years or more. But that type of catch basin inlet wouldn't be the most appropriate for that location. And we can certainly change the inlet the next time that we pave. That would be a good time to do it. I'm not sure when we're going to be paving West Glen Street. But really when you're putting in storm drainage systems, the type of catch basins, there's different inlets for different conditions. And also there's the curb inlets, which allow like the backside of the curbing to have water come in. On West Glen, there isn't that. It's just a regular catch basin grate. So as far as like a single city standard, it's really a case by case situation, and it should be designed for your application.
The slope makes a difference then in terms of what you're talking about for the catch basin, correct?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. And Councilor Bartley has just joined us, so welcome, Councilor Bartley. We just started talking about the issue, the city engineer is unable to make it, and I know, Mike, you talked to Mike Williams from Suez, and I know he talked a little bit to me before about it, and same kind of thing, that there were things that we would have to do. Any idea about if the improvements, what the potential cost would be?
To change something like that out, it would probably cost around $3,000 per catch basin, because you have to cut the asphalt, remove the old grate, install a new grate, and patch it. It's not something that the city does ourselves. We use Suez.
Yeah, I mean,
and based on other basin and manhole repairs that Suez has done over the past few years, I would say $3,000 would be the cost to the city.
And if maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say that we would wait till we were repaving. And what if repaving doesn't take place for another couple of years? I mean, I'm assuming we're having flooding problems there.
Well, I'm not sure. Councilor Bartley can talk to flooding problems, or if it's just that the runoff in the street is bypassing the catch basin and going further down the street. looking at that catch basin, I'd say it's probably been there for 20 years. It looks like a very old style catch basin inlet grate.
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Terry for taking this up, and hope every other committee is having a great night and a great meeting. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I think Mike hit it all on. I don't know if there's any plan to resurface West Glen. I mean, the road bed looks really good. Martin Street was resurfaced, and there was a new berm put in. So to have to wait for that, I don't know if that's our best course of action. So Mr. McManus nailed it. It's water flows over it because it's pitched so steeply, and he's also right, and it flows right around it. And there's actually a 4 or 5 inch gap between the end of the catch basin and the berm. So it's kind of like it's window dressing, really. It doesn't really capture the water. And then what happens, of course, in the winter is it freezes, and then salt trucks are called, and accidents have happened there, and then people have a lot of trouble getting up that hill. And so I was thinking when I wrote the order, yeah, I definitely want to target West Glen because of that pitch, but there certainly are other avenues that are pretty steep. I'm not saying we're Worcester, but we have some pretty steep hills, and I think most of us can point to Bemis and other places where the water just rapidly fires down. But to me, the worst one in Ward 3 is probably as far as that kind of rapid flow goes is West Glen. And what I'd like us to consider for now, I'm sure. What I hope we can do is Terry or Mike, you can direct me to is it Mr. Williams, because I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, Mike Williams. Mike Williams. Yep.
Okay. Okay. I would love to sort of connect with him on site and get his take, especially with a cost factor. And so Mike McManus to kind of wait that long. For streets that really they're both are in good shape as far as I can tell. Maybe not the professional standards, but they both look like in really good shape. So I'd hate to have to wait till we resurface. So is it something that we can potentially budget for, or maybe wait next year? Maybe there'll be free cash. Is that something that you could consider, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it that way. Normally, this type of repair would be handled through the sewer fund. We have the contract with Suez. As part of that contract, there is an allowance for sewer rehabilitation throughout the city. The budget is around $100,000, but with all of the work that we do, the sewer collapses that we have, we usually spend twice that, if not more. And that just means that the fee that we pay Suez costs even more. So it's not really like something that we can budget ahead of time. It would be around a $3,000 cost for someone like Curran or another contractor to take care of. We can always do it. We're just going to have to pay for it one way or another.
Yeah, I figured that, but it's I guess a cost benefit, Mike. So I don't know what. To salt and sand and run crews up there in the winter, and then to try to, I don't know. I mean, the city did a really wonderful job helping out 2 or 3 property owners there with the berm, and just really, it's made it. I want everybody to know what a great job the DPW workers did in installing that, and it's just made a great deal of difference. But now with this water runoff, it's one of those things where I would hope we could find the funds. And so the other thing, Mike McManus, is this something we can bond for? Do we have a bonding budget for capital improvement?
No.
Okay.
Nothing along this lines. We bonded for the sewer separation project down on Jackson Street. But that's a larger, multi-million-dollar project. I don't think we would typically bond for these smaller catch basin manhole rebuilds. So this is the type of work. I know Linda had filed an order recently about was it Homestead Avenue with some manholes that are sunk down, and there's other. It's any time that there's a catch basin that needs repair, that's where that allowance comes in.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but I know I've called those in over the years.
Yeah. And what we do is we just make a list, and it's kind of like you know, the triage way of approaching repair. And when you have smaller repairs that are $3,000, they take a second seat to a sewer collapse on Essex Street, where you have to set up bypass piping and excavate and replace a large 15, 20-inch pipe. And then those sewer collapses on Essex Street will take up, you know, $40,000, $50,000 worth of our $100,000 annual allowance. So that's even less capacity that we have to make these repairs to the catch basins and the manholes that get rebuilt, unless we want to exceed that allowance. And sometimes it's worth it to exceed the allowance. We just have to pay for it at the end of the year.
Okay, well, this is all very helpful. And who's that special girl in the background, Mike?
Oh, that was Bridget. And I think Kieran came in with some food.
Yeah, I saw Kieran. Yeah.
And I don't know, Adria was popping around in the back too at one point. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to name them all, Mike. That would be too much pressure for you.
It would. Don't ask me their birthdays either.
No, or your date of your marriage. I wouldn't bother with that. Okay, so yeah, just a committee. Thank you. You know, probably we can say it's comply with it, but Mike, just so I'm clear, this is going to be put on some kind of a list at some point, and you update that list and you present that to City Council so often.
No, I haven't presented that to City Council yet.
I guess that's kind of what I'm driving at, Mike.
Sure.
I'm kind of hopeful that you.
We could. There is a wish list out there. We go over it with Suez. They monitor which ones are getting worse with time, which ones need to get addressed sooner. We also plan for it with paving projects, like we had said earlier. Certainly, this is something that we can expedite. We can do ahead of a paving project. But yeah.
Oh yeah, please, Mike, because the paving project could be. Yeah, just
it
in order
seven
not even needed.
plus years from now.
Yeah, not even needed. But and I'll shoot you an email, Mike, just to get Mr. Williams's contact info, and I like to just put in touch with him. So.
Councilor McGee?
Sorry, Terry.
You all set, Dave?
I am, Terry. Yes, thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
I'm good. I think Councilor Barley handled a good proposal to say the order's been complied with, that we will hear back from the DPW after we contact Suez about possibly, putting this high up on the list, because I think we're all familiar with the street. And I live on hills, but I think this West Glen, that particular corner, is always seems to be problems whatever time of year it is. And Michael, the McGivern house is pretty quiet these days. Are you hiring out any of those assistants?
Right, say that again. Hiring out
any of your assistants?
Yeah, I thought I'd have to pay people to.
On the motion complied with.
The motion is complied with. I also would agree, and I would encourage us. I know it's $3,000, and we probably don't have it, but I think this. We got. If we can do 3,000 and really correct the problem, then I think we got to figure out a way to do that. And I know I did talk to Mike Williams about that when Councilor Bartley first filed the order, and he did indicate he gave me somewhere in that $3,000, $4,000 range as well, and he thought it was something that they could relatively do without any major problems. So hopefully we can get to that point and put this on a priority list. So motion is made that the order has been complied with. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item 11 is introduced by Councilor Murphy. Order that the city engineer consider the possibility of constructing a speed bump at South Bridge Street adjacent to Valley Arena Park. There have been incidents of drivers speeding while children were crossing from the street in the park. Make a motion, we take it up.
So moved.
And I'm actually, the next two orders I'm actually filing, so they're going to end up being, Councilor Hernandez, I'll get you in 1 second. But in this particular case, we've met, and now with the project going on in South Holyoke and with the sewer project and the redevelopment, it's my understanding that we're looking at potentially having slightly raised pedestrian crosswalks at that area, which I think will satisfy the potential speed problem. Councilor Hernandez? Yeah, Councilor Hernandez.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if do you guys still need me to stay in the meeting or to meet the quorum, or am I all set?
We're all set.
Okay, thank you so much.
Right, thank you very much.
Have a good night, councilors.
Thanks, Libby.
Bye-bye.
So again, I filed it. Mike, I am correct that we are, that is part of the plan in the South Holyoke.
It's, yeah.
Right?
So the Valley Arena Park, it is a raised crosswalk there. We opened bids last week for Valley Arena, and the bids came in within budget. It's the same contractor as doing the Jackson Street CSO separation, so there's going to be economies of scale, and it's good to have the same contractor doing all of that work in South Holyoke.
Do we have any idea when that would be done?
No, I'm not sure where that work is in the schedule. And
connected to the Jackson Sewer project?
It's not. The Housing Authority project is separate, but it's the same contractor doing both.
Okay.
And we're in the process of awarding a contract now.
Okay. So is it possible that it could be done by this fall?
I don't know. I don't know the schedule of that project. If it's a multi-year project, I mean, there was a lot of work happening with curbing.
Yep.
And road work.
Okay.
So we'll get back to you on overall schedule for both projects. I'm sure you'll be interested on when things are happening.
Yep. I am. Okay, so Joe, Councilor McGee, if it's all right with you, I mean, I'm willing to. It's been complied with. I wanted to verify that we were getting it before I gave up on this one, but I think the raised sidewalk makes sense. And again, we just got a nice playground put there, and kids are running across the street, and people are driving like crazy. So,
if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I like the concept of a race sidewalk. There in other communities. I don't believe, Mike, we have any in Holyoke as of yet. And has there been any discussion or looking into, with the height of the raised crossing itself? And does this fall into our speed hump ordinance, where we have to do it by ordinance and we have to get the neighborhood to agree to it?
I'll have to get back to you on that one, whether or not you would consider the raised crosswalk a speed hump.
I'm just curious. I'm still in favor of the, I think Northampton has a number that are very effective on the main street there, which I don't think we could put speed humps on that type of street according to the way the law reads. And I hope we can, but I just curious. I want to make sure we do it the right way and not get in trouble, afterwards.
Yeah.
I do think the city engineer, when he first talked about it, I think he did say they fell underneath the speed bump, and that they were easier to do in terms of putting across and still providing an ability to slow people down and provide obviously the protection. I'm assuming there's going to be pedestrian crosswalks there as well, or signage as well.
Thank you.
The order's been complied with.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 12 on the agenda is also introduced by myself, and it's ordered that the mayor provide the funding needed to upgrade the electrical systems at Wisteria-Hurst. The current system prevents the museum from doing some business, but also poses a threat to personal safety and increases the threat, loss of fire. Make a motion, we take it up.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And again, I'm filing this or I brought this up again. I had it in there hoping that we were going to, but now that we've got CPA funding approved for Wisteria Hearst and some grants, and I know the city engineer had worked with Kate from Wisteria Hearst to do this. So and Chief, I'm glad you're still with us. This ought to be a major improvement in terms of not having fire risk.
Absolutely, Councilor. This is a nice project. I'm glad that it's received the community preservation money that it has, and hopefully we can get the rest of the project funded and get these upgrades done. It's long overdue. The wiring in the Wisteria Museum is antiquated at best, and it really needs an update sooner rather than later.
The understanding right now is that potentially could all be done by the end of the summer.
That would be great.
Yeah, we met with Kate from Wisteria. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but we met with Kate. Sorry, we met with Kate from Wisteria Hearst, both in finance and the full city council voted on it last week. But not just the CPA money, but the additional monies that seem to be all in place to the tune of $185,000. And it looks like they're going to accelerate the process while Wisteria Hearst is closed to get at it.
So again, I had filed this back in February of 2019. Obviously, I'm pleased that this is going to be getting done, and I do want to. Go ahead, Councilman McGee.
No, just make the motion it's complied with.
Okay.
I thought you were asking me to do that.
Well, I'll second that motion. And again, I also want to thank the city engineer, who I know met with Kate on a number of occasions and brought up the importance of getting this done. And Mike McManus, I know you were involved in that as well. And again, I'm just happy that this is finally going to come to fruition. And as I understand it, all of the potential problems that we saw already, and in anticipation that there might be some additional things, are also part of this whole process. So Wisteria Hearst should be totally up to snuff. So all in favor of the motion that it's complied with?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Aye. Last order is introduced by Councilor Anderson Burgos. Order that the City Council form a volunteer commission to study and recommend solutions to comprehensively address panhandling in the city of Holyoke. Members of the commission should have a range of backgrounds and expertise related to various concerns and contributors to panhandling. These should include, but not be limited to, public safety, public health, employment, and education. So I was hoping that Councilor Anderson Burgos might be able to join us and give us a little more explanation. But Ryan, did you hear it all from Councilor Anderson Burgos?
No, I did not.
Okay. I mean, clearly we've got issues. And trying to come up with solutions is something. I think the idea of what he's trying to do is get everybody together and really try to handle it. I know that I've looked at Portland, Maine, which had a program which reached out and actually ended up, I think, being able to get about 20% of homeless people into productive jobs, starting off working, getting skills with the city or city of Portland, and then ended up getting private jobs. And Albuquerque, New Mexico has done something similar. But I mean, obviously the problems are diverse, and the solutions need to be diverse. So, Chief, would you have any comment on this, Chief? I'm sorry. Wait a minute, Councilor Bartley first. I'm sorry, Councilor Bartley.
Well, I'll defer to the chief.
Okay. Chief?
No, I really don't have a public safety comment. I think it's a police matter that needs to be addressed. You know, it definitely is a problem. I see it every day. You know, we have a panhandler out in front of our station on Station 3 on Northampton Street and out in the middle of the road. It's a problem. We drive these big fire trucks around, and you know, any slip of the wheel and someone could get hurt, and that's the last thing that we want. So it is a problem. It needs to be addressed. How to go about it, your guess is as good as mine.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, can I address the chief for a second, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Chief, have you relayed that comment you just made to either the police chief or to the mayor?
I haven't yet, no.
Is that something you know, I'm not gonna, but is that something you could consider doing?
I could speak to the police chief tomorrow. Yeah, I could definitely do that.
Okay, thank you. Because that's one of those things where not only is what Jeff mentioned that there's one, certainly that's standard operating procedure, but half the time there's quite often two at that location, one on the Northampton Street and one on Whitings. So those are the two. And I just, you know, I'm not gonna beat this dead horse, but I'll just comment to say that you know, there was supposed to be a task force put together by this under the former chief, Mr. Chairman, and there's a nice headline. I think we're now going on 3 years, but it might be 4 years, and the task force met once, and what was said or done, nobody knows, nobody remembers. We only know that nothing's ever been followed up since. But what I really appreciate the counselors' efforts here. I'm going to just suggest to committee that we have a template and ordinance. I'm not saying that we want to put it in ordinance, but we have a template for a committee such as this in the Whiting Street Reservoir Committee, which, you know, hopefully that'll find the light of day at some point. Maybe we have to wait for a new mayor, but that will find the light of day. But the template for setting up the committee is in place in ordinance. And while you don't, I mean, it's a 9-person committee. We've got certain appointees from the mayor and other public bodies, and eventually that will come together. So you could use this, and I use that from another template, and then now Councilor Bacon's trying to use that same template for the to review the school building committee situation. And so what I hope is that we as a city will sort of consider that. You know, I mean, you can reject it too, I guess, but hopefully you'll consider it, and then Councilor Anderson Burgos will take the lead on that, and that he'll start thinking about who he would like to see on a committee. I mean, to me, you could probably leave it right here in public safety. It again doesn't need to be ordained. You can set up an ad hoc committee just under the auspices of this body. You know, why not? And at least we can maybe start a conversation. And I think what the fire chief just said is you know, vitally important, and it's something that I don't think, you know, maybe we've considered it, but when you hear from a public safety officer that, you know, this could potentially be an issue, even with just a slight mistake, and next thing you know, the city's facing a massive liability lawsuit. Why? Because we didn't, as a city, enforce our own ordinances, Mr. Chairman, by removing individuals from a public way after staying there for a certain period of time, which, you know, maybe some would call it loitering. And now there's a tragedy on our hands, and we can think of other things. And if I had just another chance, if I could just address the chief, and one last thing, Chief, do we have is it been your experience that there are encampments around the city of Holyoke, maybe near Mitchell Field, maybe the Springdale section by the Connecticut River? Is that your experience, Chief?
Absolutely, Council. They're all over the city. Springdale Park, Mitchell Field, 391 area, behind Kmart Plaza. There are encampments all over the city.
So, I mean, just as a society, thank you, Chief. So just as a society, I hope we'll do better. I hope that the fire, I know the fire chief will have a conversation with the police chief, because they do talk daily, and maybe that this can, we could get some feedback directly from them. What would our public safety leaders want us to do? What kind of committee would they like to see? So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Councilman McGivern?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One is on those encampments, that Springdale Park tent city. The city can make some money renting spots down there for tents. That is beautiful on the riverbank there. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe how nice it was down there. I won't tell everybody why I was down there, but I was wearing a different hat than this one. Following up on Councilor Bartley's comments, I think I'd highlight or be in favor of the part, David, you said why don't we just set up our own ad hoc committee? And the reason is if we do it by ordinance and it goes to the mayor, he can reject it and slow down the process. I'm not saying he would, but if we set up an ad hoc committee, we could ask one of our counselors, perhaps Councilor Burgos, to chair it. He could call the meetings and get the same people together by getting them to be placed on the committee. It's just a thought. We may have to refer this to charter and rules because we can do it by rules, not by ordinance, but just a thought.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that thought. And obviously the mayor had attempted to do a committee, and obviously that did not pan out. And Anderson Burgos definitely, Councilman Anderson Burgos definitely wants to see if we can do something. If I could ask a question to Mr. McManus as well, Mike, with all of the various locations, are we having significant trash and littering and things along that lines that your department is having to pick up on?
Yes and no. I mean, we respond when we're requested to by either the police department or Board of Health. The Board of Health also gets involved with cleanups, and they have some capacity to hire contractors to make cleanups. But for the most part, we don't go after the camps. We wait until we're directed to take care of the camps.
Okay, and I have not heard of any. I've been to the Springdale camp, and I'm going to say there were probably 60 or 70 people there, and I could be wrong, but I didn't do an inventory of people. But there were quite a few people, and it was, I'm going to say, probably 70, 80 yards down by the riverbank. But when I was there, I did notice that there was a lot of trash that was kind of on the other side of the dike. And I don't know if that was from people coming up and throwing their trash on the other side or not. But I haven't ever heard of anybody being criminally assaulted. And I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but I have never heard of anybody. Obviously, there's an intimidation factor. But I mean, we got issues of, why are they there? What can we do to provide them with an incentive to become more a complete part? And I know there are, and I've had people say to me, I prefer to live like this. And so how do you stop that? But I think, trying to put a committee together per Anderson Burgos request, looking at and I'm going to table this one more time and let him have a chance to come into the committee and offer his comments in committee. But I think, we as a city council could put together, as Councilor Barton and Councilor McGee have said, an ad hoc committee that would kind of deal with this, bring all the key players in and just see what can we do? How do we reach people? How do we maybe turn 20% and give them a better quality of life? And if we did that, that's a major improvement. But for right now, without the Councilor Anderson Burgos, I would just be in favor of tabling it until their next meeting.
If that's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to table.
Well, Councilor Bartley.
Can I just ask a question to the chair, to Councilor McGivern?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Joe, what is it possible in our rules for us to leave this table here in this body, but do as you suggest, kind of send a copy to charter and rules for discussion over there in the hope that it would take up an ad hoc, so just so we can sort of move this forward? Or can we do that? Or
I think that's a good question, and we sometimes get it confused. The full city council chose to put this item in the public safety committee, so we can do the work. Obviously, we can do the discussion. It's not like it's an ordinance or an appropriation where it has to go to finance or it has to go to ordinance. It's suggested that this would go to rules. The only thing with a rule is we can't do it the same night it comes in. So I think if the full city council is willing, once this committee reports it out, that we'd like to set up the committee, I think we're okay.
Okay, so maybe to the chairman, we could just, because you already got, HPD, HFD, Board of Health, and DPW reps on them. So you could have a 7-member commission and then with or a 9-member commission or 11-member commission just with interested parties. And I'm sure the chiefs would we'll recommend somebody from the community, somebody that are advocates for the homeless. So it'd be, really important to hear from them. So we can, we can do some legwork here, and I do get the councilor's intention, and if Joe says we can set it up here, why don't we do the heavy lifting here and then send it back to city council and then refer for a quick blessing at charter and rules, and off we go.
Okay. No, sounds good. So for right now, Councilor McGee,
Motion to table.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And that is the last item on the agenda. Motion to adjourn.
Motion, so moved.
Okay.
Good night.
Hey, good night, everybody. Thank you very
Good
much
night. Thank you, everybody.
for staying with us. Mike, thank you for staying with us.
Yeah,
Take care,
thank
Councilors.
you.